Welcome to this English lesson about describing relationships. There are many different types of relationships in the world. This will not be a lesson about the types of relationships. Instead, this will be a lesson where I'll teach you how to describe relationships. If you watched the video earlier this week from Tuesday, I did a lesson about how to describe good and bad relationships. As I was doing that lesson, I realized that besides phrases to describe relationships, there were a whole bunch of words, a whole bunch of adjectives. So in this English lesson, I'll teach you how to describe a whole lot of different relationships that you might be aware of. So one of the first ways you can describe a relationship between people who really like each other and have been together for a long time is to say that they are close or that they have a close relationship. You can use it both ways. When I was young, my cousins lived close to us, but I was also close to my cousins in terms of our relationship. Every Saturday we played together. They would come over, my brothers and sisters and my cousins would play. So we became very, very close. We had a good, fun relationship. So when you say you are close to someone, it means you know them well. People will even say things like this in English. Are you close to your parents? Which means not do you live close to them. It means do you talk to them often and do you share each other's lives? So when you describe a relationship with the word close, you're describing a relationship between people who talk a lot, hang around with each other a lot, and know each other well. When we describe a relationship as a serious relationship, we're usually talking about a romantic relationship and usually one that's just started. So it might go something like this. Oh, I hear your son is dating someone. And then the person could say yes, and it's a serious relationship. That means there's the potential that they'll keep dating for a long time and they might even get married someday. So when two people are dating, and you describe the relationship as serious, what you mean is that it might be for real and it might be for a long time. So sometimes people start dating in their teens, early 20s, and their parents or other relatives might describe the relationship as a serious relationship. Oh yeah, she's in a serious relationship with a guy she met at university. They might get married someday. As opposed to a brief relationship, a brief relationship would be maybe when someone goes on a date 1 or 2 times. This would also be used to describe a romantic relationship. If someone goes on a date once or twice, they might later say, oh, I had a brief relationship with Dan, but we only went out on 2 or 3 dates and we weren't very compatible. It was just a brief relationship. So brief, of course, is an English word to describe something that is short, and we also use it to describe relationships. Uneasy. So we're getting into the bad kind of relationships. When you're in an uneasy relationship, it means that you and the person you're with don't get along. This would also be used to describe a romantic relationship, but also a relationship between family members or friends. You could say, I've been friends with him for a long time, but it's not a very nice relationship. It's an uneasy relationship right now because he lost his job and he's just in a bad mood all the time. So it's an uneasy relationship. So not enjoyable would be a better way to describe that. We also have another way to describe romantic relationships where people date for a while and then they break up. So this is another way to describe a romantic relationship. They date for a while and break up, and then they date again and they break up, and they date again and break up. We would then say they're in an on-again, off-again relationship. I had a friend a long time ago who he dated a girl for 3 months and then they broke up. And then a month later, they started dating again, and they dated for 6 months and then they broke up. And then they dated for a month and broke up, and it kept... they did eventually get married and they're still married, but they had an on-again, off-again relationship. So they dated for a while and then they didn't. It was kind of amusing, actually. That's kind of a funny way to describe it, I guess. But we never knew when they were or weren't dating. We also have the term long-distance relationship. So a long distance relationship takes place between two people who are romantically involved. So maybe they're dating, but they live in different parts of the world or different parts of the country. Far enough apart that you can't drive there easily in one day. So Jen and I, when we were in university, I finished a year before Jen. And so for 6 months, we had a long distance relationship. Jen and I would talk on the phone every couple of nights. We were able to email each other, but primarily we talked on the phone. We had a long distance relationship. It was not easy. When you're dating someone who lives far away, it's not always fun. And I would drive to visit her every weekend almost. That was fun. You might have a stormy relationship. So a stormy relationship is a relationship where there is a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing. And again, remember, when I use the word fighting to talk about relationships, I mean arguing. In English, when you say, oh, that couple's always fighting, they have a stormy relationship, they're always fighting, we mean arguing. We don't mean they're hitting each other. So when you probably all know someone who has a relationship. They might be married, they might be dating, but it's a stormy relationship. There is a lot of arguing going on. Sometimes a relationship is described as strained. Sometimes this can be between two people who are dating. This can be between parents and children. Sometimes parents and teenage children will have a strained relationship. That means that the teenager wants to do things that the parents don't want them to do. They're disagreeing a lot. There will be some arguing, but also there might just be some behavior that one person does that upsets the other person. Here's a good example. If a parent says to a teenager, you must be home every night at 11 p.m. And if the teenager always comes home later than that, the relationship would become strained. There would be some conflict in that relationship. So that's how we would describe that, a strained relationship. Problematic. This is a good English word to practice your pronunciation. When a relationship is problematic, it means that there are problems that come from it. Now, this is just a picture I found on the internet, and I'm sure these are all great people. But I'm going to use this as an example that maybe the parents of one of these guys doesn't like the friends that he's made. The parent might think it's a problematic relationship. Whenever one of these guys hangs out with the other three, they get in trouble. There are a lot of problems. Maybe at school, when these four are together, the relationship is problematic. They convince each other to do bad things, to steal things, or to always be late for class. Sometimes teenagers will have a problematic relationship with other teenagers, which causes them to get in trouble a lot. I see this once in a while at work. Very little, but it does happen sometimes. Hey, you might be in a long-term relationship. This is another term for a romantic relationship. When people date for a couple of weeks, we call it a brief relationship. The opposite would be a long-term relationship. How long have you and Dan been dating? We've been dating for 12 months. We're in a long-term relationship. So a long-term relationship is used to describe two people who have dated for quite a long time. You would say, oh, they're in a long-term relationship. I wouldn't use this to describe, like Jen and I are married. You could say it's a long-term relationship, but we would just say we're married. I usually use long-term to describe two people who've dated for, over a year, for many, many months, a year or two or three. They're in a long-term relationship. Sometimes we just use the word broken to describe a relationship. You could use this to describe a friendship. You could use this to describe a marriage. You could use this to describe two people who like each other romantically. You could say, oh, it's a broken relationship. They don't even really like each other. Or I don't get along with my sister anymore. It's kind of a broken relationship. or my parents and I don't talk. It's kind of a broken relationship. So when a relationship gets to the point where people aren't communicating anymore, we would describe the relationship as broken. So not a nice kind of relationship to be in. Professional. Sometimes you have a relationship with people and it's just a professional relationship. At work, I have professional relationships with my colleagues. You know people at work. They aren't your friends. They aren't your family, but you still talk to them every day. You do have a relationship, and we would call it a professional relationship. It's nice to have a bunch of really good, friendly colleagues, people who you can talk to about your life. I do talk to my colleagues about my life. We do talk about what we do on the weekends. But again, they're not my friends and they're not my family. So I would say they are people I know in a professional capacity. Friendly. So the basic way to describe a relationship that's just really nice, a relationship between friends, is to say you have a friendly relationship. It's nice to have a lot of friendly relationships in your life. It's nice to be able to chat with people like these people are. They're just sitting under a tree having a nice conversation. They're having a friendly conversation. They're friends. They are in a friendly relationship. Probably one of the best kinds of relationships is a friendly relationship. Romantic would be a relationship between two people who really like each other in a romantic way. That means that they would like to go on a few dates. They might eventually fall in love. They could eventually develop a long-term relationship. They might even get married someday. So when two people like each other in a romantic way, when they find each other attractive, when they like talking, when they like spending time with each other, we say that they are in a romantic relationship after they've gone on one or two dates, okay? So when Jen and I started dating, at first it was just one date, then two dates, and you could say we were in a romantic relationship. Healthy. So we describe relationships as healthy and unhealthy. These are very broad terms for relationships. A healthy relationship is a relationship between two people where they are very respectful of each other, where they enjoy each other's company, where they have good conversations about life, where they maybe have fun together. It's good when parents and kids have a healthy relationship. It's good when spouses have a healthy relationship. It's good to have healthy relationships in our lives. A healthy relationship is any relationship where after spending time with that person, you feel better, you're happier, and you're just, life is better. So an unhealthy relationship would be the opposite. In an unhealthy relationship, two people aren't very nice to each other. There might be a lot of arguing. People might call each other names. They might, the relationship could just be very, very bad in a lot of ways. We would describe that as an unhealthy relationship. A good example between a parent and a kid would be if a parent works 80 hours a week, and let's say they're a single parent. If a single parent works 80 hours a week and a child comes home and there's no one home every day, they would start to have an unhealthy relationship, right? It's good to spend time with each other. You could even have the same situation where two people have a kid, but those two people fight all the time. Then that would be an unhealthy relationship for the people fighting, but also an unhealthy relationship for the child. So broad terms, a healthy relationship, everything's happy and fun and good. In an unhealthy relationship, a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing, just not a good situation. And then eventually you might describe a relationship as a failed relationship. So a failed relationship is usually used to describe a romantic relationship that has ended. Okay, so he was dating someone and now they're not dating anymore. It's kind of a failed relationship. They didn't get along. They didn't connect. The relationship is over. It is a failed relationship. Sometimes you'll hear someone say, Yeah, he was married once and then he was in a long-term relationship after his divorce, and then now he's single again, but he might date another person. You could say he's had a series of failed relationships. So, not nice to have a series of failed relationships. Unstable. So, an unstable relationship is a relationship where one or both people, maybe they drink too much alcohol, maybe they do drugs, maybe the person is happy for a week and then they're in a bad mood for a couple weeks. Like, it's a relationship where it's not healthy, it's not unhealthy, it kind of bounces back and forth. It's very hard for kids to be in an unstable home. If there's an unstable relationship, maybe their dad just disappears for a week or two and no one knows where he is. And then he comes back and it acts like everything's okay. We would describe that as unstable. Toxic. So we heard the word toxic in one of the questions. A toxic relationship would be a relationship that is very unhealthy, a relationship where people call each other names, where people are always saying mean things about the other person, a relationship where maybe one person makes the other person feel dumb or makes the other person feel like they can't do anything right. It's a very unhealthy, bad relationship. We would describe it as a toxic relationship. This is a relatively new word, okay? Toxic is usually used to describe like stuff that's bad for people. Like if you live near a factory, they might have toxic waste that comes out, and we've started to use it to describe relationships already. So a toxic relationship. I'm glad we got back to a positive one. You might be in a very loving relationship. Oftentimes when a couple dates for a while and eventually they have a long-term relationship, eventually they might get married, they might be in a very loving relationship. This means that they do nice things for each other. They spend time with each other. They're kind to each other. They buy each other gifts every once in a while. They help each other out. They share the job of being parents if they have children. So a loving relationship is probably the ideal relationship to have if you are married or get married or have a long-term relationship. Someone who is just very, very loving. Now we're going to go negative again. A dysfunctional relationship would be a relationship where people just, I don't know how to say it exactly. I want to say when people don't behave in a normal way. So if you have a friend who always works late or goes places, says they'll go somewhere with you and then doesn't show up. If you are dating someone who asks you out on a date and then comes an hour late. If you have a relationship where two people are dating, but one person still flirts with other people. Do you know what the word flirt means? So when two people are like each other romantically or are in love, if one of them still like flirts with other people, it means they're not behaving in a nice way. All of those things would be dysfunctional. If someone uses a lot of alcohol or drugs in a relationship, the relationship would be dysfunctional as well. So not a happy, healthy relationship. And meaningful. So people often like to have meaningful relationships with people. Grandparents like to have a meaningful relationship with their grandkids. Parents like to have a meaningful relationship with their kids. I like to have meaningful relationships with my friends. This means that it's not just all fun. You talk about life. You give each other advice. You help each other in a meaningful relationship. It's nice when, I just think like my brother and I have a very meaningful relationship. My mom and I have a very meaningful relationship. I don't just call my mom or visit my mom and tell jokes. We talk about how things are going. I ask my mom for advice. My mom sometimes asks me for advice, which that's new, but I'm getting older, so I guess I'm getting wiser, maybe. Anyways, meaningful relationships are very, very nice to have. They can make life a lot easier because you can share kind of some of life's burdens with someone and get advice. Supportive. A supportive relationship can be between an adult child and their parent. It can be between friends. It simply means someone who is really nice at giving you advice, a nice supportive relationship, someone you can call or talk to when something goes wrong. It's always nice to be able to, let's say you lost your job, you were fired. It would be great if you had a friend or a parent you could call who is very supportive. When you have a supportive relationship, it means they help you talk through what happened to you and feel a little bit better about it. Tight-knit. So tight-knit is used to describe any kind of relationship where people really, really like each other and do a lot of things together. So if you have a tight-knit family, it probably means you see your family a lot. If you have a tight-knit group of friends, it means you see each other a lot and you do a lot of things together. We always hope that our kids will have a tight-knit group of friends around them. We hope that they will find some nice friends. And I would say that my brothers and sisters and I, we're a tight-knit family. We talk regularly using the internet. We don't see each other as often as we used to, but we certainly talk almost daily in a little group chat we have, my brothers and sisters and I. Tense. So this is simply another word for uneasy. You might have a tense relationship with a friend where you just, it's not so much arguing. It's more that you like different things and want to do different things. And so maybe you fight a little bit, you argue a little bit. Maybe a friend wants you to hang out with them more, but you don't have time. And they get annoyed with you because you don't spend time with them. You could say that you have a tense relationship with them. Sometimes you just have a solid relationship with a group of friends. This would be the same as saying that you have a tight-knit group of friends. But when you have a group of friends, these guys, these girls, they look like they like hanging around together. They look like they are enjoying each other's company. They probably have a solid relationship with each other. They have a solid friendship. They can trust each other. They can tell each other things about their lives and know the other person isn't going to tell everyone else if they have a secret or something. So it's good to have some solid relationships in life. And then here's a very basic one, just a happy relationship. When you have a happy relationship, you laugh a lot, you smile a lot, you enjoy each other's company. I've used that phrase a lot. It's a very common phrase. Oh, we really enjoy each other's company. So a happy relationship. Harmonious would mean that there is not very much fighting. There isn't a lot of arguing. And again, remember when I say fighting, I mean arguing, okay? A harmonious relationship is just a nice, peaceful relationship. It's nice to have harmonious relationships in our lives. They help us feel better about the day as we go through it. As opposed to tumultuous. Should I say that word again? Tumultuous. A tumultuous relationship is one that does have a lot of arguing. It does have a lot of fighting. If you're in a tumultuous relationship, it's very stressful. It's not relaxing. It is not enjoyable to be in a relationship where one or both people get angry very easily. That would be a tumultuous relationship. Forgiving. So we are humans. We make mistakes. Sometimes we say things that we don't really mean. Sometimes we argue when we should instead be finding a solution. So it always is nice to have or to be in a forgiving relationship. A forgiving relationship is one where both people understand that everyone is human and everyone makes mistakes and people are able to forgive each other. So that means if you do something to me that hurts my feelings, I'm able to, if you then apologize and I forgive you, that would be a nice forgiving relationship. The ability to say, I'm sorry, and the ability for the other person to say, I forgive you. Another simple one is just to be in a fun relationship. It's just fun to be in a fun relationship. Maybe you have a group of friends that likes to go and do fun things all the time. You could just say, oh, it's just really fun relationship with these people. We enjoy each other's company. I'm saying it again. We love doing things together and we really enjoy being together. As opposed to boring. A boring relationship is not fun. It's not a bad relationship. It just isn't exciting. It isn't fun. It's a relationship where when you're with that person, maybe you almost fall asleep because they tell really long, boring stories where you just aren't that interested. So that would be a boring relationship. A controlling relationship. So a controlling relationship is a relationship where one person tries to control what the other person does all the time. Two people who are married, one of them could be very controlling, and you could say that that person's in a controlling relationship. This can happen at work. Your boss can be very controlling, and so you would just say, I don't get along with my boss. It's a very controlling relationship. He or she is always telling me what to do, even though I know how to do my job well. Or she's in a very controlling relationship right now with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend tells her what she can and can't do. He's very controlling. She's in a controlling relationship. So not a positive thing at all, a controlling relationship. And then there's always flexible relationships. I always think that parents have to have a very flexible relationship with their kids. As kids grow up, parents need to make sure that they drive them where they need to go. Parents need to be very flexible. They need to be flexible with their time. They need to be flexible with their money. They need to be flexible in the sense that their kids might want to do something that they don't enjoy, but they should, like if one of my kids wanted to play basketball, I don't know how to play basketball, but I will be flexible. We have a flexible relationship. I will drive that kid to basketball practice. So when I think parents and grandparents are usually very flexible. My mom, I have a very flexible relationship with my mom. She is very flexible. If I call and say, can we stop by tomorrow? Or here's a better one. When my kids were younger, they would sometimes go to her house after school. So she was very flexible. It was very nice